What's going on, folks? Renegade here. And again, I'm outside working on this. My Maxim rebuild cafe racer. Now I'm going to admit, it's a little cold, a little breezy, so I'm not going to be out here for too long. But today is the intricate part in designing the bike, figuring out a game plan for where I'm heading. This is not going to stay like this for long. And I have to figure out where I'm going with it in order to, well, figure out where I'm going with it. Not sure yet. I have an idea. I'll show you that in a bit. But I have to figure out the game plan with the bike because now I can actually see everything. So I already know where the front is, and the gas tank, and the swing arm. The question becomes the seat and the tail. Now, I do want to go cafe racer with it, but I don't want to go with that single seat and that hump look, because I'm not a big fan of the hump. I mean, it works on some bikes, but for me, not huge on it. I think with this body look, it'll look a little, I don't know, like it's missing something. So we're going to go with something a little different. Now, one of my plans for this bike is I do want to make it a single seat bike, but I want to have the option for a passenger. It's probably not going to happen much, but you know, never know. So, one of the things this means is that I want to have the seat, and then I'm going to have a flat part as part of the back, instead of having the little hump. Because with that hump there, you're only ever going to be able to ride one person. You're never going to be able to have a passenger, because they'll be sliding off the entire time. And like I said, I don't think I'm going to have many riders on this, many passengers, but the extra just in case. Maybe one day. It's nice to have. So, I got to figure that out, which means taking the seat off and figuring out where it's going to sit. Luckily, this is when having spare bits comes in handy. Now this is actually the seat from my first bike. Well, the bike that was hit. It was totaled. The plastic was totaled. And yeah, the cover that was on there, the vinyl, completely destroyed. I actually wear a large section of it on a jean jacket I have. So we're going to use this to mock up where the seat is. Means I got to cut this. Boom! Two halves. Passenger, rider. Now I go over the seat, or the bike rather. Well, that's roughly where that's going to sit. Now, why did I use the seat instead of getting a new one? Easy. Frame's already built for it. Or the seat's already built for the frame. However you want to look at it. Which means I don't need to mess with much. Obviously, there's more that will need to be done with this. I'll have to make a clean cut on the plastic and that foam, because this foam is, well, destroyed. So I have a good, viable seat. But this is for mock-up, so it's okay. So this gives us our line, or our basic idea, and then we got to figure out this portion. So now I'm going to show you a bit that we're not going to get into a whole lot right now. But I already have a headlight, and I got the tail light. Ta-da! The reason I say we're not going to get into too much is because I'm going to put this on in another episode, and then we're really going to talk about it. But I do need it for design purposes. Because you don't just look at a motorcycle from one side, you look at it from all the angles. From the front, from the sides, from the back, from above. You don't look at it from underneath because that just looks weird. But in order for me to figure out what I want the tail to be, I need to know how big I want it. Now, part of my design idea is that I don't want the tail to sit too low compared to this. If you're looking at the bike, I want the tail to be roughly the same height, if not slightly lower. slightly. I don't want it to be too long either. So I'm thinking tail's probably going to only go to about here. Ish. Which means this is going to have to be trimmed off. Which, if you know anything about me, will mean it'll be trimmed off and that will be saved for later. But with these, or with this, I know I want it roughly this wide. I want it roughly this wide and roughly this tall. As I think it's going to go about here. So all this extra stuff's going to be cut off. Now the easy way for me to figure out the rough shape and everything is cut pieces of cardboard. Use them to mock up a tailpiece. And then we'll figure out how we're doing it from there. So I'm actually going to cut to working inside. And I'll show you how I design the tail. Alright, so designing the bike. This is where things get a little weird. Because nothing I'm going to design is going to be the final design. It's just kind of a guideline so I know where I'm aiming for. First thing I did was I drew a rough sketch so that I have the basic outline of where things are going to be. The things I cannot change. Obviously, I can't change the wheelbase too much. Well, I can, but it gets difficult. So, got the rake, front tire, rear tire, and a rough marking of where the engine is. Well, where the exhaust is, which tells me where the engine is. And the frame. Those things I cannot change. Now that I know the rough shape of the bike, I can design the rest of it. Now for that, I can either continue to draw on here and get the idea, or I can draw on my computer. And what I did was I drew on here. Now I knew that I wanted to lower the front end a bit, so I moved the tire roughly. Changes the ground line. So now, looking at the bike a little more angled like that. That's where the gas tank is, where the seat is. I'm going to cut the seat so it's not continuing. And I know that the back bar is here. Would be shaped a little more like that. Whatever. And I want to keep roughly that same line. But now I want to curve this a little. Come down, because that's going to be where my taillight is. And I want to get rid of all this. So I'm going to cut this line here. And that's roughly a shape. I did this before, and I did it a little more detailed. Boom! A little more detailed, a little more drawn out. So this is the rough design. Obviously you can see rough shape of lady, roughly. And then over here is a list of ideas. And this is all great and everything in a fantasy world where I've drawn a rough mock-up of the bike to then continue planning on. But does this correlate anything to the actual bike? That's where things get tricky. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photo of the bike that I have outside. As it's set up, the rough mock-up where the tank is, where the seat is. Got it on my computer. And now I can draw directly on it with the help of my bamboo tablets. Yeah, it's like 10 years old now, but it still works. That's all I really care about. So using Macromedia Fireworks, I'm going to draw on it. No, not Photoshop. I don't have Photoshop. I'm poor. Now with this, I can draw directly on the piece. For instance, I know I don't want that. I'm going to cut that right there. And remember I said I wanted to go slightly curved. I wanted the bike to end over there. And I know the stock fairing goes something like that. It gives me a line to follow this up. I'm probably gonna go a little lower because I want that framing covered. Leave room for that. Maybe like that. I think that's a little too long, so we'll just erase that. Again, this is all rough drawings. You know, end it about there. At the corner. Cool. Now, just erase what isn't there, or what I don't want to be there. That is roughly what I'm thinking about for the bike. And of course, you know, I'll have things like the headlight. And the tail light. The main things to keep in mind were that I wanted to make sure I kept this body line. Roughly. I wanted to make sure that the wheelbase from here to here is going to fit with the shape of the bike. Keeping the tail above the end of the tire for looks purposes. And obviously I want to make sure that I didn't change the rake. That's this line here. Well, I should say this angle here too much, or else it would shorten this down and make this too direct. That would cause my bike to be twitchy and would compress the forks too much. Be like preloading your suspension, but not as wonderfully. So these are the main things I wanted to keep in mind. And when you look at it from afar, like this, you get an idea whether or not it's going to work. As I said, I don't want this body line here to be too drastic. I didn't want it to look too short. So overall, this is going to be what people see as being the length of your bike. The front fairing to the taillight. Visually, I think that works. Now obviously, I only went into brief details about the actual geometry of a bike. If people actually want, I can do another video on that later on down the road. Let me know down in the comment section if you want to know what's the geometry of a bike and how does it affect things. Since I have a rough idea what I think will visually work, should draw back outside, or you can continue to watch me try and actually come up with the physical mock-up. Alright, so while you guys were watching that, I already started over here. And now what I've done so far, very simple. I traced roughly the shape I wanted, or the size I wanted rather. I traced roughly the size I wanted based on the tail light. A piece of cardboard, and I just have it kind of duct taped half-assedly. The tail roughly where it's going to be. But this is probably all going to get trimmed off. We'll figure out all this later on down the road. As I said, I want this line roughly to be a little lower than the crown of the gas tank. Roughly. And what I'm going to need for that is I'm going to need to figure out now the back line. I think it's going to have to go a little higher. But the cool thing is we can actually false it by having this line here and then folding it down a smidge. Wonderful thing about this is cardboard is cheap. So now we've got this rough line, which is a little lower, but overall not too bad. Now with a Sharpie, I can figure out the rough height, which I think is going to be about there. Mark everything. So that's roughly going to be where the seat is. So obviously this will sit up a little more. And that'll put me at about that line. Isn't half bad. Now I got to figure out how wide to make it. So with all the little bits and whatnot under here, just gonna mark off roughly where it goes, where I want it to go, to roughly where the seat is. Do that on the other side. I'll cut it out. There we go. Now obviously I'm overcutting everything, meaning I'm leaving extra space just in case. We're not sure how everything's going to line up quite yet. But since I got roughly this shape, now I will tape it off, and later on we'll figure out the exacts, because some of it obviously, you can see, it's not perfectly symmetrical, but we'll get it there. It's a step-by-step process. And the wind is killing me. I'm going to tape this to that piece now. Alright, so I took the bike off the center stand to get an idea where it's going to sit on its normal seated position. And I kind of like it. It's good. The tail's roughly the same height as the crown of the tank, which is good. Then the only thing I have to worry about is my my gauge level over here. We'll figure that out. It's not bad though. Now the trick is to figure out the angle I want for the side pieces. Right here. Because again, I don't want it to be too wide and too goofy. Because I want it to be thinner than the tank. A rough gauge is, when you're thinking about a motorcycle, it should roughly be shaped like a woman. Don't insert any weird riding jokes in here. But it should be roughly the shape of a woman. So curve, curve, and then in. So this side's probably pretty close to what I'm looking for. Obviously this isn't exact because nothing is exact on this right now. Comes later. I know, don't worry, this is planning. We're probably going to keep these as our guide rules. Once I get the top designed and figured out, then I can worry about underneath. Because I'm going to have to figure out a way to get this mounted. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do that yet, but I have a couple ideas. But overall, this is a good start. Now the sides. So now I've got this big piece of cardboard here. Big being a relative term, obviously. And I've got it duct taped to the top of the back, and just as an anchor point there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go on the other side of this seat. I'm going to trace the rough shape. So I can then trim it down to that. With your handy dandy Sharpie. By the way, Sharpie, you should be sending me money. You know how many Sharpies I use? Jeez. I traced the shape of the seat and the shape of the bottom of the frame. So I take this off. And we've got this. Now I'm going to leave a little extra down here when I go to cut it, because frankly we're not sure how that's going to sit yet. Now with it cut out, I can attach it roughly back to the seat, or back to the bike. Now we get more of an idea. Now, because I'm going to want this to sit under the seat, I'm also going to need to trace to figure out the line for the foam, where the actual bottom of the seat is going to sit. We'll do that a little bit later. Again, we want to make sure that we have the seat figured out before we go cutting our lines. So this is going to be a mock-up tail section that I'm basically going to be using to figure out where everything goes. We'll also have to figure out this section here. Now, there are stock pieces that I can buy that will fit between tank, frame, and slightly up the arm. I'm not sure if we're going to go with those or whether or not we're going to do something new. That part I'm still trying to figure out in my head, but we'll get there, and when we know, then we'll actually buy them or not. Let's take a step back and take a look. Right now, it looks very blocked. It's very blocky. I'm not sure how I feel about the blocky shape yet. But again, we got to figure this all out. It's all part of the process. Sitting back and looking at your work is a very important process, and I don't think people quite understand how valuable that is. But trust me, when you're working on something, doing a design, making something original, it is very, very useful just to stop, sit back, and try and figure it out. So this is more rough. I did trim down this piece a little bit so that the seat fits its shape a little more. Angle-wise, I'm not unhappy with that. The problem does become, though, that over here on the side, this back piece only goes to about here. That might mean that I might need to trim more of this back. Might trim it as far back as here, so that then I can get an extra angle going here, make it look not so blocky. And I do want the frame to be hidden, but I don't really like the look of everything being perched on top of the frame. It should all be one. I think I'm going to trim the cardboard a little more to allow for that. Then we can figure more out. So this is the rough shape we're working with right now. Now, obviously, this back panel here only goes to about here. So this all needs to be trimmed down because I don't want that nasty overhang. But in order to do that, we have to start trimming off sections of this frame. I'm not looking forward to cutting off sections of frame, but I know it will have to be done. But this is just planning, so we're not going to get into that yet. I can't fully solidify this back panel plan until I have the seat cut so that I can actually have it sitting where it needs to be, and then I can figure out things like where it's going to line up. This is all rough design. Part of my grand plan, though, is I do want it to look simplified, but only so much. If I can keep under here as simple as possible, that would be ideal. Well, I think this is a good breaking point for me for today, guys. But progress, you know. I already have the line here because it's dictated by the bike, and figuring out this line back here, it's a big step. Really big step. And this is where you guys are going to come into play. I'm debating, do I make these out of metal, which I know I can do, and can be fairly simple, but a little on the heavier side, or do I try something new and make it out of fiberglass? I'm not entirely sure, so do me a favor, and down in the comment section, tell me what you guys think. Final product, that back cowl, fiberglass or metal? As always, if you enjoyed the video, if you're looking forward to the next part, obviously this is part 2, hit the like button. And if you missed the last episode, so you don't know what's going on, you're very confused, there'll be a link to a playlist for this bike build down below in the description. And hey, you want to chip in, you want to help me out with this rebuild, why don't you buy me a coffee? First link down in the description. Well, this is embarrassing. I'm sitting here editing the video. I've already shot the whole thing, I've edited the whole thing, I'm reviewing it, and I realized I never explained the grand look I'm looking for. So, this wonderful design that I've drawn up, and the digital design that you see me roughly mock out, it's cool. I think it'll look cool, but there's more to it than just that. The parts that I can't put into a drawing are the overall feels that I want. I don't mean like, oh no, I'm catching the feels. I think I'm getting a stirring. No. What I mean is, there's a particular way you want a bike to feel when you look at it. Some bikes, like the S1000RR, are aggressive. The Ducati V4 is aggressive. You know you're gonna haul ass down the straightaway and hit it hard into that first bank. No. You look at you look at a lot of Harleys, and it's all about relaxation, touring down the road, being big and loud and noticeable and macho. None of these are what I'm looking for. I want it all to be sleek and elegant. That means that I want to remove a lot of the weird sticky outy bits that you would normally see on a bike. Now I'm going to do this, I'm not going to make it unsafe by any means. I'm still going to have all the safety features. They're just going to be a little different than what normally they are, because I don't want those things. I want it all to flow nicely. I'm also probably going to go with a darker theme, something that's less eye-popping and more elegantly eye-catching. I won't get into that too much right now, because we're going to do a whole nother video on paint scheme and paint design, everything like that down the road. But I think when everything is said and done, this should be a really nice, sleek bike. If you don't quite know what I'm talking about, think something that George Clooney would ride down the road on. It's the best analogy I can give you. It's in here, don't worry. But that is going to do it for me for this video. I'll be back with another video on this series, hopefully as soon as I can. Hopefully the weather gets nice and I can actually work outside for longer periods of time. But we'll have to see. But as always, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, hit the like button, leave a comment below, let me know what you're thinking about this build so far. And I'll be back soon. Y'all have a good day. Keep rocking and rolling. I'm going to keep taking care of business. I'll see you in the next one.